The RG Cube is a very unique console, essentially the same internals as the RG556, but with refined externals focusing on retro aesthetic and pocketability. The RG Cube instantly screams late 90s, early 2000s aesthetic with its shape, colour options, but more importantly provides a 1x1 screen that is a better fit for 4x3 aspect ratio games, which are what make up most of the emulation options on the RG Cube. But does the 1x1 screen and better pocketability translate into a better console than the RG556, or is it an unnecessary addition to the huge Anbernic lineup of retro handheld consoles? I've been using the RG Cube exclusively as my #1 console for the past week to answer these questions, and this is what happened. Initially, I missed the boat on the review cycle of the RG Cube. It was not a console I initially thought warranted much interest, essentially just being a slight modification of the RG556, so I didn't reach out to any of my contacts to see if they wanted to collaborate with me on a review. However, over the weeks since the Cube initially released, I couldn't deny that my interest was growing. Something about the RG Cube was calling out to me. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. Was it the potential improved pocketability? Something I'm finding more and more important these days? Or was it Bob Wolf's analogy with an early 2000s Nokia mobile phone? Whatever it was, I found myself ordering one on AliExpress, and when the RG Cube arrived, I was really glad that it did. Instantly, the look and feel of the RG Cube stood out for me. The metallic pink definitely makes the console stand out, and is the colour I'd go for if you really want the uniqueness of the RG Cube to stand out. Furthermore, the feel of it in my hand was great. Being an evolution of the RG556, the RG Cube has similar grips on the back to help with ergonomics. But with the RG Cube being a narrow console, I thought it might not feel as comfortable. That's certainly not the case. Although your hands are closer, the RG Cube feels equally as comfortable as the RG556. The square screen also looks great. I do find the 1x1 ratio a bit of an odd option, as it really only caters to a handful of games if you're looking for an exact ratio match. By far the most common aspect ratio for games on pretty much every retro emulation handheld is 4x3. I still wonder why most consoles that release from these manufacturers aren't just 4x3. However, I can definitely say that 4x3 games fit much better on a 1x1 screen than they do on a 16x9. The RG Cube is not an OLED like the RG556, but honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference. The RG Cube screen is really bright and vibrant, which is perfect especially for outdoor gaming. Other than that, the RG Cube shares pretty much all the same features as the RG556, including a Unisoc T820 octa-core processor, a Mali G57 GPU and 8GB of RAM. Having bought the RG Cube from AliExpress as opposed to receiving it from one of my usual suppliers, it came with a different set of preloaded games. The one I selected came with a few hundred PS2 titles, and this was a really refreshing change. You see, usually when I'm testing devices, especially for PS2 and GameCube emulation, I go through similar kinds of games. As much as I try to vary things, I inevitably have a general set or type of game that I aim for. Whereas having this list of games that wasn't chosen by me was a nice surprise. It was full of games I wouldn't normally try, or games I haven't played in years. For example, Airblade. Airblade runs brilliantly on the RG Cube with the version of Ether SX2 installed. It looks fantastic on the square screen, feels great with the ergonomics of the RG Cube, and runs really smoothly. I initially loaded Airblade just to see how it runs, but before I knew it, I had spent the whole first day playing just Airblade. The next day I went car shopping with my dad. No, not for sweet retro Japanese cars, but for a nice little runaround for my dad. But that ain't gonna stop me showing some sweet retro Japanese cars on the screen right now. Anyway, I decided to not take the Cube with me. I didn't really think I'd get any time to play with it, as I had my 3-year-old daughter with me as well. But also, for as pocketable as the Cube is, it's not an all day in the pocket kind of console. You can easily carry it in your pocket for a few hours, but it's not at the level of the RG28XX. So I left it at home. Honestly though, this is the first time in a very long time that I've truly been excited to get back home and jump onto a console. Not really since the days of being a kid or getting a brand new next-gen console have I really felt this. But there was something about the RG Cube, or maybe it was just Airblade. I don't know what it was, but something had me daydreaming of getting back to my RG Cube and jumping into some sweet PS2 gaming. To avoid spending the whole week playing just Airblade and not making this much of a challenge, I decided to download some other games. First off, I tried a cricket game. Cricket isn't really a sport I'm personally into. However, I was chatting with a subscriber and they made a good point of including more of a variety in the games I test, especially for some other demographics, and the idea of a cricket game popped up. So I jumped into Chrome on the RG Cube and downloaded a copy of Cricket 07 on the PS2. But things were not good. Not that the game wasn't fun, I just couldn't really play it as the RG Cube was significantly struggling with it. Playing around with the settings, changing GPU renderer, clocking options, etc. made some improvements, but not enough to improve the FPS high enough to make it a smooth experience. However, I decided to carry on with the idea of picking some games I wouldn't normally, so I went for Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? This was already loaded on the RG Cube, so I thought I'd give it a go. And you know what? I really enjoyed it. The questions were definitely US focused, but I still found it good fun. It reminded me a lot of the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire games. One round lasted about 30 minutes, which was enough for me, and I got all the questions right, apart from the very last one. I know you're all going to ask me what it was, but I honestly can't remember, and I just really wish I'd taken a picture of it at the time. The next day I jumped into some Minecraft, which I usually do with my kids. Minecraft played really well on the RG Cube and made for a really fun experience. With Minecraft being an Android app, it uses the full real estate of the 1x1 screen, and this is where the screen really started to shine for me. This new perspective for Minecraft made for a really immersive and unique experience as opposed to the usual 6x9. I genuinely think this might be my favourite handheld console for Minecraft. I continued to play Minecraft for most of the day, which eventually introduced me to my first minor issue. My wrists were starting to feel a bit cramped. The RG Cube is a very ergonomic console and one of the more comfortable retro handhelds out there, but with your hands being closer together, it's naturally not going to be as comfortable as the RG556. I would still say that the RG Cube beats the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro for comfort and sits near the top of my list, but it will still eventually give you cramp if you play it for too long. The following day was the start of the new Fortnite season. Not something that is on my radar or I'm usually really bothered about, but my kids love it and always want me to get involved. We had plans that day to head to the grandparents for dinner, so I went ahead and tried to download Fortnite on the RG Cube, but I couldn't. As with the RG556, the RG Cube is not compatible with Fortnite. I think it's something to do with the version of Android that's installed, but either way it's a shame as I was looking forward to seeing what Fortnite was like on a 1x1 screen. Unfortunately, I had to bring my Retroid Pocket 4 Pro with me that day, as it was the only option I had to play Fortnite with the kids. When I got back though, I made up for it by cramming in a load more RG Cube time. Once again, trying some games I'd never played before. Xiaolin Showdown on the PS2 was a fun, simple beat-em-up game that's based on the popular kids TV show. A genuinely fun pick-up and play game that runs really well on the Cube. Teen Titans on the PS2 was a real surprise. Based on the original Teen Titans show and not Go, Teen Titans is a brilliantly fun beat-em-up game that is incredibly true to the TV show. I had a lot of fun playing Teen Titans on the RG Cube, and it's definitely a game I will be adding into my usual rotation. Now you might have noticed that I've mainly focused on PS2 games on the RG Cube, and that's mainly because of the games that came preloaded on the system. In the last few days I did decide to jump into some other consoles too, mostly Dreamcast. It was no surprise that Dreamcast games look and play brilliantly on the RG Cube. Tokyo Extreme Racer was so much fun. Driving around the highways of Japan and flashing your high beams at other street races never gets old. And it's just as much fun on the RG Cube as it was on the original Dreamcast. On first impressions, the RG Cube might just seem like a slightly modified RG556. And in some respects you'd be right. The only real difference is the size of the console and the screen. You might even consider it a downgrade considering the RG Cube has an IPS screen compared to the 556's OLED screen. But you'd be totally wrong to judge the RG Cube until you have it in your hands. Something about the RG Cube just screams nostalgia and charm. The 1x1 screen definitely feels a better fit for 4x3 games than a 6:9 screen does, and it adds a new spin on more modern Android games. The refined pocketability also makes it a much more comfortable option to take around with you day to day. But there's something more about the RG Cube that keeps me thinking about it even long after this challenge ended. I find myself more excited to pick up the RG Cube over my 556 and even my Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. Can I explain why? No. Maybe it's the weird design that gives me these nostalgia vibes. But what if this isn't enough nostalgia for you? What if you want that fully authentic nostalgic feeling of classic handheld gaming? Then you'll definitely want to check out the RG35X XSP.